tape right now because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden is the best Biden ever.
Craig Pastajardula. Check him out. Pasta go. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Wookie Goldberg. Amish. Thank you. Hannah, sir, whoever the president is, not going to save you. We have to save ourselves, especially by freeing ourselves from mental slavery so we can see how sad, toxic, dangerous this entire way of life is for us. Hannah, sir. Listen to him. Was his dumbass, smartass way of saying, you think Trump's so smart? Go vote for him then. Challenge accepted? Question mark. I think you're right about that. Listen to him. You're right, already dead, 1967.
Is that what he was saying?
Yeah, listen to him. Was his dumb, smartass way of saying, you think Trump's so smart? Go vote for him then. Challenge accepted? Funny, already dead. Thank you for clarifying. Amish. Thank you. The self-awareness conversation discovery is only true way to change things on the deep level we need. Staying on the political level is superficial and ineffective. We need to get to the whys. Hannah, sir. My favorite part of covering the Libertarian Convention in D.C. was seeing Pasta walk into the hotel lobby and immediately kick the shit out of a plastic bottle on the ground like a boss. Propaganda report. Voting is the least of your worries if you don't have an ID, but let's never talk about that. Nothing to cheer or nothing to see here. That's what you're doing. Okay. What does it matter who we vote for? They're all the same. The system is the same. It's a system we need to unmake. It's people's brain structure we need to affect and heal. Biden/Trump are not that different. Aim higher. You got that right, Hannah, sir. Thank you for that. What do I have over here? Thank you, Jimmy and crew. It's great to see Craig Jardula on today. Thank you. Oh, that was from Beauty and the Boomer. Thank you, Beauty and the Boomer. Jimmy, you should let Joe Rogan know about Dr. David Martin. Would like to see his message reach an even wider audience. Thanks for having him on your show. Netulism. Thank you, Netulism. And then my final one, maybe summer leave gave us the exact number of illegals in the country. Cornpop the Batter Dude. Thank you, Cornpop the Batter Dude. Let me see if I got anything else. Stand by. All right. Oh, what's this one? Yes, I got that one from Netubilism. Thank you very much. All right. Jimmy Dore, do you need anything else?
No, you want to go commercial?
All right, let's go to break. We'll be right back.
I'm Josh Shakespeare.
I'm Chris Keene.
This is Pretty Bad News.
Joe Biden told Israel's Netanyahu he wants a ceasefire in Gaza. His exact words were, quote, "We want an immediate ceasefire as soon as you drop the 2,000 bombs we just sent you."
An illegal immigrant is accused of stabbing his wife to death and trying to decapitate her in front of their children. What did she say to him?
Jimmy.
Oh, that was our own Chris Keene. that you just saw. Chris is one of our editors.
Pretty bad news.
I got someone trying to book me on a comedy gig.
All right.
In Houston.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Misha, do you remember this? The site that Jimmy did the ad for, kind of like this show, for news sites and bias ratings? Ground News. User for me. It's called Ground News. All right, let me just put that Ground News in the chat. Hold on. Thank you. How can you remember that? Ground News. All right, Jimmy Dore.
So get this. So Joe Biden, they had this NATO summit, and Joe Biden's a maniac, right? He's an unbelievable maniac, warmongering, crazy maniac. He has been his whole life. He was the reason why the Iraq War got okayed in the Senate, and I'm going to show you that in another segment. He's a maniac. He's a bloodthirsty maniac, tool of the military-industrial complex, and he gave this. And then they had a NATO summit, and I'll show you just a piece of it, and then I'll show you what Tulsi has to say about it.
NATO would break Today, NATO is stronger than it's ever been in its history. When this senseless war began, Ukraine was a free country. Today, it is still a free country. And the war will end with Ukraine remaining a free and independent country. Russia will not prevail. Ukraine will prevail.
So that's...
What did you make of it? There's...
So that's... I'm going to get to Tulsi in a sec, but that's all lies. This senseless war, it is senseless, but it was provoked by the United States and NATO. You have to know the history of how we got here. It was because we overthrew the democratically elected president of Ukraine, who did the United States, the CIA, and right-wing Nazis inside of Ukraine. And why? Because they didn't want the deal they were getting from the IMF, who? The president of Ukraine, and he got a better economic deal for his country from Russia. Well, we didn't want them to connect with Russia, so we overthrow their democratically elected president. We put in a puppet, and then the people in the eastern part of Ukraine, in the Donbass, the Russians, didn't want to go along with that coup government. So the coup government starts shelling those people. They have two peace agreements, the Minsk Accords, Minsk peace agreement. Guess who doesn't abide by them? Ukraine. Ukraine keeps shelling those people. So then they double the shelling in the month before Putin invaded. So it was also threatening to put Ukraine into NATO. They're still doing that. And that was always known as a red, you can't do that. That's a red line you can't cross. Just like we wouldn't let Putin put army and missiles in Mexico or Canada, he's not going to let us do that in Ukraine. And so we did all this with the specific intent of having him invade Ukraine to A, stop the shelling in the Donbass and denazify Ukraine so it didn't become a NATO ally. That's the whole point of this. I'm not but in NATO. So we did all this. There was already a peace agreement before the war started. We squashed it. The United States and NATO. There was one immediately afterwards. Zelensky agreed to it. There was a peace agreement in March of 2022, 2.5 years ago. We squashed it because, as Julian Assange has taught us, these wars are not meant to be won. They're meant to be ongoing. And what they're doing to Ukraine is they're breaking it up and they're selling it off to BlackRock and Vanguard right now. And that's what the IMF wanted to do to Ukraine. And they said, no, we don't want any of this. And that's when they went into an economic agreement with Russia, and that's when we overthrew their president. So here's what Tulsi has to say about him and his NATO speech.
There's two major points here. Number one is President Biden simply making the statement that Ukraine will prevail, Russia will not prevail, does not make it so. He is being dishonest with the American people and 100%. Being dishonest with the people of Ukraine who he claims to care about.
So the people of Ukraine are being slaughtered by the hundreds of thousands. The average age of their military is now over 40. They have to rip people off of corners, street corners, and throw them into the military. So this actually, if you're for the Ukraine war, you're anti-Ukraine people. And guess who doesn't care about the Ukraine people? The war machine, Joe Biden, the neocons running the country, and NATO. Okay.
This war will continue to go on as a war of attrition. Many, many more Ukrainians will needlessly be killed in a war that you and I and many others have known from the very beginning would only end with a negotiated treaty. There are so many reasons why this is the case. They have been proved out throughout the almost 2 years now that this war has been waged. Russia has a strong military-industrial complex. They have many, many more troops than Ukraine will ever be able to muster, and they are already running out of able-bodied men who are willing to go and fight. They're essentially kidnapping men off the streets now and forcing them to fight and making it so that those who fled Ukraine because they didn't want to fight in this war are being forced to come back into the country. Russia has already rebuilt and reconstituted their military to a point where they are stronger now, both in hardware and in manpower, than they were when they started this war, when they invaded Ukraine, which obviously was wrong, but this is the reality that we are facing. So for President Biden to say this, to make this statement, promising our taxpayer dollars, as we know, some NATO allies are looking at sending in their troops, which, if anything happened to a single one of their troops, would invoke Article 5 and force us to get involved. He's being dishonest with the American people about the cost, both of our taxpayer dollars and our security. The longer this goes on, the more it continues to escalate, as President Biden is escalating this proxy war, which ultimately is about regime change in Russia. The closer we get to nuclear Armageddon, and we are already closer than we ever have been before. The other point that I think is really important to make here is, as you said, Megan, we do care about the people of Ukraine and their plight and the destruction and the loss that they are experiencing. Those who really care about the people of Ukraine, if President Biden really cared, he would have led those negotiations to end this war a long time ago. We have the leverage to be able to do it. Lastly, he talks about Ukraine is free and will remain free. What does that freedom look like? Well, in a free Ukraine under President Zelensky, he has dismantled, disbarred, and imprisoned any major political opposition.
Like freedom people do. He's also banned all the opposition newspapers and even churches. She's going to tell you.
Or political parties. Anytime they stand up and start to challenge him, he uses his Department of Justice to ban their existence and to seize their assets. He just did it again recently, a few weeks ago. He has taken total control of all of the media in Ukraine. It is now a government-controlled media and government-controlled messaging. He has gone after, I think, is the second largest church in Ukraine and banned them and shut them down. He has canceled elections so that anyone who wanted to challenge him and his leadership and the decisions that he's making does not even have the opportunity to do so. So how can you say this is a free country? And secondly, we look at, well, how does that apply to, why should we care? Why should we care about what Zelensky is doing there when we have our own president saying that we are defending Ukraine's democracy and we're defending Ukraine's freedom? Well, if that's what he thinks is freedom and democracy, we got to pay really close attention to what they are doing here at home and how willing they may be to claim a state of war and martial law and cancel our own elections and defy our own constitution, because this is what freedom is to President Biden and his administration.
So that's what's really happening. That's what's going on in Ukraine. That's what's going on with his great NATO speech. Ukraine has got to win and Russia's got to lose. He's just lying so people get slaughtered. Like he's always done. He didn't care how many people got slaughtered in Iraq. He didn't care how many people got slaughtered in Libya. He didn't care how many people got slaughtered in Syria, Afghanistan for 20 years. He doesn't care. Joe Biden is an empty, soulless vessel. Here, she has a little bit more to say.
It's a fact. It's a fact. The fact that Joe Biden is gloating about the expansion of NATO, really what he is gloating about is the fact that he has made us, the American people, and the world far less safe, because by doing so knowingly, and history tells us this is true, the red line has always been around, for Russia, has always been around how they view an expansion of NATO encroaching around their borders as a red line and as an existential threat to their security. It's been very clear since before Putin was ever even in power, and it still remains true today. We look at how we would feel if we were in a similar situation. We would also be concerned about such an existential threat. So the fact that even before Putin invaded Ukraine, you had Kamala Harris once again out there in a very provocative way, promising that Ukraine would become a member of NATO. Tony Blinken recently, again, promised Ukraine will become a member of NATO. So where does this road lead? It leads to one that is more dangerous than many people can even imagine, and one that President Biden is lying to the American people about. You hear all of this bluster as he's trying to project strength, but what he's actually doing is putting the interest of the military-industrial complex and his own facade of bravado and power ahead of our own safety and security and our ability to even think about having a world to live in tomorrow. No one talks about nuclear war these days, which should be a red flag to everyone, given we are closer to the brink of nuclear war than ever before. And President Putin has made no bones about the fact that they are running nuclear armament drills and that their laws have been changed to say if we face an existential threat, we are authorized to use nuclear weapons. What that would kick off in the world is unimaginable when we think about the last 20 years of war we've seen in Afghanistan and Iraq. We look at the cost of war, the cause of the blast itself, children's skin melting off in the streets. You have the nuclear winter that follows for anyone who survives that initial blast. Ronald Reagan was 100% correct and understood the seriousness of this when he said a nuclear war cannot be won and should never be fought. We should heed those words very carefully now, because quite literally, the very future of humanity on this planet are what is at stake because of what Joe Biden has done.
So that's what she has to say about his NATO summit and NATO speech. He's making us, I mean, everything they claimed that Trump was going to do, they're doing. They're making the world way less safe. They're actually trying to pick nuclear wars. You heard Scott Ritter when he came on the show last time, we're like 3 seconds away, the nuclear clock. And they're sacrificing hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians against them. They thought they were going to be able to, well, what they're doing to Ukraine right now, which is turning it over and privatizing it and giving it to BlackRock and Vanguard. They're giving all their farmland, all their everything, and infrastructure. That's what they wanted to do originally. And Viktor Yanukovych didn't want to do that. And so they couped him. And so they thought they were going to be able to do the same thing to Russia. They thought Russia was way weaker than it is, and they were going to be able to balkanize it, break it up, sell it off. That's what they thought they were going to be able to do, and they're not. And now Russia's stronger than ever, and now we've pushed them closer to China, which everybody from Chomsky to Henry Kissinger and everybody in between said, don't do that. They've done that. So every bad thing that you could think to do that they claimed Trump was going to do, they're doing. And here's Mersheimer. I'll give you, here's what he has to say about all this.
The fact is that the American foreign policy elite is actually quite homogeneous in its views on what American policy should be. The argument that the Republicans and the Democrats think about foreign policy in different ways is not true. This is Tweedledee and Tweedledum. It's very important to understand that both President Obama and President Trump got elected on a platform that said they were going to fundamentally change American foreign policy. In both cases, the so-called blob, the foreign policy establishment, defeated them. Remember, Trump was committed to improving relations with Putin, right? He was interested in getting out of Europe and putting an end to NATO, and so forth and so on. None of that happened. And the reason is the blob, the foreign policy establishment, is so powerful. So even if Trump gets reelected in 2024, he's not going to be able to change things very much at all. American policy is set in stone at this point.
So there you have it. Everybody agrees, homogeneous. Everybody on the news agrees on our war machine. Everybody in the Democratic Party agrees on our war machine. Everybody in the Republic, almost everybody in both parties agree on the war machine. Almost everybody. And that's why we have these endless wars. And that's why when Biden was pulling us out of Afghanistan and you had knuckleheads like Kyle Kalinske saying, I'm a Biden bro, he's getting us out. And I was like, you're such a chump on purpose. You're such a child. He's only being allowed to pull us out of this war in Afghanistan because there's got another war lined up, and sure as shit they did. And it's the Afghanistan war. I mean, it's the Ukraine war. Of course they did. Anyway, I say bravo to Tulsi. That's the good Tulsi. That's the great Tulsi. That's the Tulsi that made me want to support her candidacy, telling the truth about our foreign policy. That was great. Okay, over to Steph.
All right, Jimmy, quick question. We have a premium streaming scheduled for 3:30, but we've only done 6 stories. You want to try for 4 p.m.?
Yeah.
All right, so my premium streaming folks that are watching the show and that you're in the queue to ask the questions, I think we have about 4 or 5 of you in the queue to ask questions. We're going to move it to 4 p.m. Thank you so much for your patience, but we're going to do the premium streaming right after the show, and we've got to get to 4 more stories before we wrap. So 4 p.m., kids. Hold on to 4 p.m. All right, here we go. We've got a couple.
Okay.
Oh, back to Jimmy.
So Joe Biden did his big boy press conference, and Rachel Maddow, they tweeted this out. Biden and Harris headquarters tweeted this out. Rachel Maddow says President Biden
His jaw was not moving to...
Hey, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there for more AM Joy and the rest of MSNBC. And click on any of the videos right here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. And you can get more videos from MSNBC for free every day with our newsletter. Just visit
Isn't it swell? The memes make themselves. They found a rabbi hole, tunnels and all. There's Jews in the walls. Isn't it bliss? The rabbit me tell you. If I were Rabbi Shmuley and diddle 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 digga digga diddle diddle dum, all day long I'd diddle little bums. If I were a Shmuley man, I'd peddle all my dildos, dreidel dildos, selling dildos with my daughter and her mum. If I were a Jewish Shmuley man, I'd be digging with a dildo in my bum. I'd wear a grotesque nose and go grab some goyim right on the nipple with a pinch. A Shabbos lap dance brace for the youngest mensch.
At this time, more than any other time, you know, revolution is necessary. It is necessary. Not only based on what has happened with the MOVE organization, you know, the babies that have been murdered, you know, MOVE adults that have been murdered, bombs being dropped on us, but past that to what is happening with all black people, so-called minority people, you know, money poor people. You know, this government, as has been said earlier, has waged war on us. But you know, something about us, particularly here in America, we don't really understand that. You know, we don't really know what war is. You know, for black people, for poor people, that people see as good, that they wasn't forced to do, that they didn't do to try to keep black people appeased, you know, and calm down so that black people wouldn't riot. A prison situation is a crystallized example of that. You can make phone calls in prison. They have movies in prison, but they don't have those things because they just want to be nice to prisoners. They have those things because they know damn well if they don't have, you know, people being able to contact their family, if they don't have, you know, facilities for people to sit there and watch movies, people are going to be frustrated, upset, and they're going to direct that frustration at them prison administrators, and they're going to have riots on their hands. You know, they're going to have people in them prisons turning them prisons out. That's why they have movies. That's why they have access to phones the way they do. And a stop to it when we don't like it, or encouraging it when it's something that's in our interest. You know, we have to call the shots. The people have to take the reins of this system and start dictating, you know, what we need, what needs to be done. And, you know, taking the initiative to do it ourselves. We can't rely on this system. I mean, you know, don't people see what's happening? Every single confrontation that MOVE people have been involved in, every single issue, you know, oppression, economic issues, every single issue facing our people, you know, is something that can be dealt with very, very simply. All people got to do is make their wishes known. All people have to do is stand up and say, listen, we're not accepting that. Unity is the key. Unity is the key to revolution. Revolution ain't nothing to be afraid of. It ain't nothing to shy away from. Revolution, contrary to what officials, you know, this system and those backing the officials running the system, you know, want people to believe that revolution means violence, you know, means blood in the street. I'm saying it can get to that point, but it don't have to be violent. You know, when people come together and take a strong stand on an issue, this government don't have no choice but to listen. Where you think they get their authority from? They don't have no power, but they do have authority to do certain things. Where you think they get it from? They get it from us, from the people. You know, they get it from us accepting the things that they do to be done to stop it. Then you have some people who want to then turn around and say, yeah, well, you know, it's the best we have, and want to make excuses. The time for excuses is over. It's over. You know, every man, woman, and child has to be involved in this revolution. Not only has to be, but is, whether you want to be or not. I mean, our babies gave their lives for this revolution on May 13th. You know, men, women, and children were murdered. And not just move babies, you know. What about all of the young men, women, you know, children 8, 9 years old shot down on the street by cops, you know, by drug pushers? I mean, you know, where do you think that mentality comes from? It comes from this system, from the mentality of this system of getting over, you know, making a quick buck, you know. I'm saying that's where that needs to be done to stop it. Then, you know, what I want people to really, really understand is that it's past time. It is past time for poor people, black people, you know, to realize that this system has failed you. It has failed you. You can't get nothing from it. And what people got to do is withdraw our support from it and start doing for ourselves. That's what we got to do. You know, how long are people going to sit back and beg, you know, this government to do what's right when for hundreds of years all you've gotten is a slap in the face? All you've gotten is this government kicking your ass. That's all. That's all black people have ever gotten from this government.